M-E-T-S, Mets of New York now.
And here are your hosts of the MetsCast, Nick Durst and John Brown.
East side, west side, everybody's coming down.
MetsCast, episode 12, right here on WGSports.com. I'm Nick Durst, joined by John Brown, and let's get right into it. The trade deadline is here, John, and for some reason, the Mets, they jumped the gun, and they took their stud closer, Jeurys Familia, who was one of the more coveted relievers on the market, and they just quickly traded him before the deadline came. This is before Zack was traded, and every team would probably really want Familia at this point with Britton off the board, but for some reason they traded him early. They get William Toffee, who's a third baseman. He is 23 years old, and he's a career .253 hitter in the minor leagues. He's in Single A right now with the A's, and then, of course, he comes over to the Mets. He's in Double A now. And they also get Bobby Wall. Bobby Wall was in the major leagues very briefly in 2017 for 7 games. And overall, he is a relief pitcher. They throw hard, but who doesn't? He did have Tommy John surgery, so he should fit right in. And this season in the minors, he's actually been pretty good. He had a 2.27 ERA with Nashville, the AAA affiliate of the Oakland Athletics. But the big storyline here was that the Mets did not want to take any of Familia's salary, so they weren't able to get high-end prospects. We'll see if Bobby Wall and William Toffee turn out to be good. Who really knows? It's really strange that Bobby Wall, they get him. This guy's having a great season. He's basically major league ready. He's already 26, and yet he's not in the major leagues. So go figure. But John, what are your thoughts on this trading Familia?
I think it just shows you the Mets once again are a penny wise, a dollar dumb. I also read a story about how letting Cespedes play that one game cost him like $7 million. So
Insurance.
They're willing. They jump the gun. They sell early on Familia. They get way less. And the real story there is probably the only team that's willing to eat up most of the salary because they don't want to have to eat the salary. So they're willing to take a bath on it. On a guy who is, arguably a top 10 closer in the league. That's an argument.
I think it's safe to say you're saying no worse than a top 3 Mets closer ever. I mean, he set the Mets single-season record with 51 saves in 2016. 2015, he had 43 saves, so this guy was lights out for the Mets. He had a heck of a career with the franchise.
Yeah, minus how I feel about
the playoff game, yeah. But
listen, that's when the closer, like the reason Mariano is Mariano isn't because.
What are you talking about? Mariano was terrible he blew the World Series. He's literally the only reason the Yankees lost the 2001 World Series to the Diamondbacks.
Oh, that one World Series. What about the 4 other?
How about the 2004 ALCS where he was terrible against the Red Sox?
Listen, the guy had like a full career, a full season of stats in the playoffs because they're in the playoffs every year. But listen, a lot of times more than not, I think the real reason, you probably make a good argument where if Familia was in the playoffs more, hey, maybe these mistakes wouldn't jump out the way they do. But the problem is the Mets really had that one real big run.
Well, I mean, if you look at this, John, though, you have that bad memory of again, the wild card game. He was actually really good in the 2015 run, where in the NLDS he had a 0 ERA in 4 games, a 0 ERA in the NLCS, a 1.80 ERA in the World Series. So overall, his playoff ERA was 2.30. But of course, and that's in 13 games, you're always going to remember the blown saves. And now, across the board, all closers, it's really strange. One year or one day they could be lights out, and then the next year they're terrible. I mean, look at Anthony Swarzak, one of the worst signings in franchise history. Guy's been awful.
I think that's one of the reasons that guys that really stand out, like people like Trevor Hoffman or, Gagne, even though he got caught with the steroids, was the fact that they were consistently dominant. But I agree. Listen, Familia is a very, very good closer. The only one who would probably come close to Mets history would be Benitez, who had his own.
I was thinking like John Franco and Jesse Orosco. Benitez, he was like a blown save machine.
But you got to look at his regular season numbers. That guy would close like 45, 50 games every year. But the problem was he would crumble under the big pressure situations. Now, I like John Franco. I like his numbers and stuff, but I think he was more of a compiler. He was never really that super dominant guy. But he was really consistent, constantly consistent. Send him out there every day. He'll give you what he got. But Familia, listen, I think that we sold really, really low. I think we could have held out and got much more for him.
Right. I mean, look what the Orioles got for Zack Britton, who's pitched like 3 games this season, coming off the DL. They got a top-line starting pitcher and a basically major league ready fielder as well.
And when it comes to stuff, it's not even close. Familia has much better stuff than Britton. Familia did have a little bit of injuries, but nothing crazy. Nothing, not like some of his counterparts. I think that Familia's young enough where he could still he could sign a 5-year deal somewhere and have 5, 40, 50 save seasons. He could still be, he's a top 10 closer in the game.
He's 28. He's 28 years old. He's gonna get a good deal on the offseason. Definitely 3-4 year deal. In his first 3 games with the A's, he's 2-0. I mean, come on. 5 innings pitched, 2-0. He's allowed 2 hits. So I think the A's are very happy getting him. But,
they should be.
Just the Mets, they should have got more. It's very unfortunate. And before you talk about what the Mets should do with the deadline, let's talk about Cespedes. I don't know what the heck the team's doing. They bring him back. The guy's hitting doubles, hits a home run, and then all of a sudden now he needs surgery. He's out 10 months. You didn't know this before. He came back. You could have did this 2 months ago, and then he would have been ready for next season, no problem. Now he's out half of next year because it's just ineptness. We always talk about this show, how the Mets mismanage injuries, and I think the Mets need to trade their strength and conditioning team because they're horrendous. These guys don't hold up over a full season, and now you mentioned them. We're going to lose money on Cespedes with the insurance. They're not going to reinvest that on the team. And we're going to be stuck next year with Jay Bruce every day playing, who has been terrible this year. He hasn't even played, but when he has, he's been terrible. And it's just a nightmare, John. It's really terrible.
Yeah, complete mismanagement. I would say part of that is ownership. It's not just the strength and conditioning guys, because all they can say is, yeah, he can play, no, he can't play. But it's like,
well, that's the trainers. But I'm talking about in spring training, they send these guys down there to do this whole program with calisthenics and weights and stretches, and they build them programs out through the whole season to stay, physically in shape, and it doesn't work because every April, the wear and tear and the fatigue on these guys is already happening. So I don't understand why they think it's a good idea to keep having the same guy, Steve Barwin, being in charge of their off-season programming and spring training. And the other thing that's funny is, you would think, John, that the strength and conditioning coach would travel with the team, right? This guy has never traveled with the team in his 4 years with the franchise. What's the purpose of that? It's just mind-boggling. It really is. Because, you want to say bad luck or the doctors are misdiagnosing, and I get that. But what's the cause of the injury? It's because the bodies are breaking down. It's not because the medical team is making the bodies break down. And it's just so stupid that after the fact, the medical team, they see a guy is hurt and he's out 2 months, and they don't put him on the DL quick enough for it, and then they wait for the surgery. It's just a nightmare. It really is.
If you look at the guys that actually play some sort of winter ball, they are either playing one of these fall league type things or they play in the World Baseball Classic. Surprisingly, the Mets that have done that, Wilmer Flores famously did a couple years ago, have stayed off the injury bug. It's the guys who seem to, in the off season, they're doing this, gym stuff, trying to get bigger, stronger, that kind of stuff seem to be the ones who are blowing out their knees or shoulders or wrists.
Like let's look back to the 80s, right? No, these pitchers were not getting Tommy John surgery, and these players didn't need all these days off. Players were playing 160 games a year. Pitchers were making 30, 35 starts, going 7, 8 innings, and there was never injuries. And that's because these guys weren't like taking all these supplements and working out in the gym and stuff. That I don't see how that really translates to helping you be a better ball player. Maybe it makes you stronger, hit better, but it doesn't. It's obviously causing injuries.
Yeah, and I think the Mets fall for that a little bit too much. I bring him up all the time, but if you look at a guy like Lasting Millage, like if you put this guy in a gym, he would astound you. If you watched him shag fly balls and throw from the outfield, or even take BP, you'd be like, "Wow, this guy's a star." But in reality, he doesn't play enough baseball. His baseball IQ is very low, and he can't play. So it's one of those things where maybe they're working out in the gym type stuff more than actual baseball strength. If you look at, I think a great example is go look at the Japanese league. The Japanese league, they have pitchers who are throwing way more innings.
Right.
You look at that last year Tanaka had before he came to the pros. I know it's a different game or anything, but what they emphasize is just differently. The way they train is just different.
Right, and then look what happens. Tanaka, his first year here, and the same thing with Ohtani now. Both of them had UCL tears in their first seasons in America. It's crazy.
And I think it's because what we emphasize is just different. Like the off-season training programs, I think it's sort of like the chicken and the egg type situation because we saw in the late 90s, the steroid era, early 2000s, where the gym rat guy took over the game. You look at Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. These guys were ripped. Pudge, they were huge. Watch one of the Mets rewind games from the 2000, 2001s. The whole everyone's jacked. You look, Mike Hampton looks like a bicep throwing a baseball. But when you take away the steroids.
Well, some of the guys you named didn't take steroids, but overall, the philosophy now in baseball is hit home runs and get paid, and that's why you don't see these different type of looking players anymore. And they're doing all these off-season programs. I mean, how many times have we heard Keith Hernandez on the air say, "I used to not pick up a ball from the last game of the season until I got to spring training, and that's when I would start getting ready for the season." It's just a totally different animal nowadays.
Yeah, I think we've fallen in love with the home run, so it becomes so much more important. But it's when you look at it in statistic-wise, sabermetric-wise, it's important. But you can get if the difference between 20 home runs and 30 home runs is going to be you blowing out your shoulder because you're doing because you're benching and you're doing all this crazy nonsense. You know what? Let's hit the 20. Let's try to get some more doubles. Maybe work on some walks. Try to get your total bases all the way up. I look at a guy like Mike Trout, who is in phenomenal shape. Let's not get anything wrong. But he's not just like this big, hurt, top-heavy, no legs, just tip him over type guys. He just, he's a big, naturally big dude. He looks like he'd be like a lumberjack or something, but he's not.
He's very mobile. He can move. He's agile.
Super.
And he's very durable. The only time he won the DL was last year, and it's only because he slid and he broke his finger on the base. That's not something that was like a muscle or something. It's just a freak accident.
Yeah, if I look at a guy like Mike Trout, and that's what I want my players to look like. I don't look at guys who are just like, who are just these big top heavy. It looks like they're, offensive linemen where they put on all these calories and taking all this supplements to try to put on weight. I think there's a little bit of that going on in baseball, and I think it's bad. I'd rather, look for guys that are natural. I look, who knows what's going on with Mike Trout other than the fact that he's the best baseball player in the game right now. But I want my guys to look like him. And if they can't because of nature, change your game so that you can produce, there's other ways of going around other than the long ball.
Right. So lots going on with that aspect. And, of course, we got the trade deadline. So we're going to talk about some trades here. The Milwaukee Brewers, they're looking to trade for Matt Harvey, but they're also looking to trade for Zack Wheeler, and they're also interested in Cabrera. And also, according to Ken Rosenthal, the Diamondbacks are one of several other teams that are interested in Cabrera. So what do you think is going to happen? We'll start with Cabrera. Do you think he's going to get dealt? And where do you think can you see him anywhere in particular? And do you think the Mets will get any sort of good return for him?
Cabrera's going somewhere. this is the high point we'll get. This is the most we'll ever get for him. So, especially because the Mets fan base didn't react well to the Familia trade, I'd imagine they're going to trade him, and they're going to try it once they get a pretty decent offer, something that they could really sink their teeth into. They're going to trade him. All those teams you mentioned, obviously, if you actually look at his numbers, he's a subpar second baseman now.
Defensively, right? He's negative 18 runs saved this season.
Yeah,
but he's hitting. He's hitting. So I think whether you're in a pennant race, you want to have him pinch hit, play a few days a week at second or third. Maybe you could fill in at short, or you're looking at an AL team. Maybe they DH him. He's
a veteran guy who switch hits. He can hit lefties. I don't know if you could get him in a position where he plays only a couple days a week in the field, and maybe do a lefty righty type situation with one of these contenders. I could see him going to. But I don't think it's anyone who's like, all right, we're missing a second baseman. This guy's the answer, because I don't think any of these contenders are going to try to go on a run with him at second base every day. But unless his offense is really just that much better than anything they're running out there, I just hope that the Mets listen. They don't need to get a guy who's going to be ready next year. I would almost gamble, because we didn't know we were going to get anything from Cabrera at the start. So I would take a higher prospect that's not ready in like lower minor leagues, rather than a guy that's almost ready that's not that high of a prospect, if you know what I mean.
The other team I think would keep an eye on is maybe the Red Sox, because Pedroia, he's probably out for the season, and I think Cabrera would be a good fit over there. But there's a lot of teams that I think he'd be a good fit on. We'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully they get someone who's close-ish to Major League ready. And hopefully I don't have to just get another reliever. Like, everybody they traded last year, they got relievers, and none of the guys have been in the majors for the majority of the season.
True, but it's all about high end. Like, I'd rather get a guy that's not ready yet, who's like he's 20, 21, that has this crazy upside, than a guy who's 24. Maybe he can play in the show, but he might not. Who knows, kind of thing. Because we have a AAA filled with guys who are just like that, who scouts aren't crazy about, and no one's really crazy about. I'd rather get a guy who's real young, who's probably needs another 2 years in the minors, but it could be a star. I want a lottery ticket, essentially.
Makes sense. The other thing is, we just discussed Zack Wheeler. Zack Wheeler famously almost went a Brewer when he was traded for Carlos Gomez along with Flores, and then that was actually canceled, of course, because of Carlos Gomez, who was not healthy, bad hips, and we got Cespedes. That worked out well. And as of late, he's been really good. I don't know, John. Do you think it's even makes sense to trade him?
No, baseball-wise, no. He's a young pitcher who has great stuff. He came back from an injury. He's still throwing hard. I think you don't trade him. Of course not. The reason the Mets are going to trade him is because it's about control with minor league money. They don't want to have to. He doesn't have that much control left because he's been in the program a while. So they want to try to move him before they have to pay him, because they won't pay him and he'll just walk a free agent. So that's their motivation.
See, that makes sense when you put it that way. But all right, you get rid of him. Now you have nobody to start the rest of the season, which, the season's over anyway, record-wise. But you're not going to be able to find somebody off the scrap heaps in the offseason that's going to give you the same kind of output Wheeler is giving you this year, because they're not going to be signing a top-level free agent pitcher. Vargas, unfortunately, is back. So it's just like, I know you want to add somebody or maybe just make a trade for trade's sake, because of maybe the impending free agency in a year or two. But, you have to at least think, maybe next year if people are healthy and we add a few people, we can actually contend. But I don't know. It's very sad.
I would say like 4 weeks ago, I was on the same boat. But the Mets' terribleness that they are, the fact that Cespedes isn't going to hold out, he's going to do the surgery, the fact that they got rid of Familia, this is a fire sale. I think they're going back to rebuild. I don't think that they think they're going to be They're not planning on.
See, I don't think you can do a rebuild right now because you don't know who's going to be the general manager next season. I think it should be up to that person to decide if it's going to be a full rebuild or not.
Well, what I think they're trying to do is give that next person a clean slate, which is rebuilding their minor league system. Because you got to realize the Mets minor league system, has produced a bunch of phenomenal pitchers, but when it comes to position players, it's been kind of of a drought.
Really, all you have is Conforto. He's the only guy that came up was an all-star. That was a position player drafted by Alderson. Nimmo looks like he could be good. Dom Smith, what a freaking disaster that was. Hopefully we don't have to see him in the majors anymore. You got Alonzo raking in AAA. Hopefully he's up soon. And McNeil, they call him up. He doesn't play the first 2 games. He doesn't start for some reason. But he pinch hit, gets a hit. The next game he pinch hits, he gets a walk. Then he started. And of course, they're winning games with this guy up, so that's a good sign. So hopefully he turns into something. So, I don't know, maybe there's some young talent there. There's no megastars in the system, unfortunately. Alonzo did very well in the Futures game, though. He had a long home run that broke StatCast, John. They said, never seen a home run that far, which was good to see. But you're talking about giving a clean slate, so they should definitely move anybody that's going to be a free agent. So the other person that they could maybe move is Devon Mesoraco. I don't know what value he has, but then again, he's a catcher. So catchers are always hot commodities. And, as you said many times on the show, if you had a son and you wanted him to be a major leaguer, you'd make sure he's a catcher. Or you make sure he's a lefty and he could pitch. Those are the 2 best ways to get a major league job.
Job security. Devon Mesoraco, actually, I think has been a very nice little commodity for us. He's 2 things. A, like you said, he's a catcher. But he's a catcher that can actually do a little bit of hitting. And he hits for power, which is super rare in this league nowadays. So I think he does have value, especially for a team that, maybe they're rounding out their lineup and they're like, all right, every day we have to play our backup, day after night games, doubleheaders, things of that nature. Anytime we play our backup, we're running in and out there because our backup stinks. He's batting 200, 1 home run in 150 at-bats. He's just terrible. And there's a lot of teams out there that have a backup that's doing that. If you're a team that's trying to make a run, maybe you do is you get Mesoraco. So now,
right, especially you're like, at least maybe give us a home run or something like that.
Yeah, now he's just as good defender as your backup, but he's not just an auto out. And if you're a National League team that's running a pitcher out there, now you don't have 2 automatic outs whenever you have to play your backup. A lot of teams are in that boat. So I could see a National League team that their backup stinks, or maybe their starters just not as good. They want to give more time off for the playoff run. Who knows? But Mesoraco has shown that he has a little bit of pop, which is great. His only real issue is the fact that he can't stay healthy. But hey, maybe being a backup will keep him healthy. Who knows?
Hopefully they can move him, but I think other than him, Wheeler, and Cabrera, no one else is going to even be wanted. Maybe somebody's like, Blevins, he's a lefty. We'll take a shot on him as a lefty. But it's sad. I mean, looking into next year, Swarzak's back, Vargas is back, Bruce is back. I mean, it's like it's already handicapping the team for next season.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things about giving a new GM a clean slate is you want to clear cap room. Well, not cap room because no cap. You want to clear payroll for him. One of the things that's very annoying about Mets ownership is the fact that I know they're getting insurance money for David Wright and Cespedes. They're 2 most expensive players. Could you reinvest that money you're getting from the insurance to new ball players? That'd be great. Instead of on paper, you look at their payroll and go, oh, wow, we're like 5th or 6th in the league. We're actually spending money. Great. But in reality, a lot of it's tied up in, DL guys who they're getting insurance payments for. Let's go out and spend that money. Why not?
Lots of money sitting out on the DL. Lots of money. So that's going to do it for this issue of the MetsCast. Next time we speak to you, hopefully there have been some more trades. We can break those down, talk about the Mets' return. Hopefully it's a good one. Get some good prospects that are highly rated. And who knows, maybe the Mets could win another series. They finally won a series for the first time since May. That's going to do it, and hopefully no more injuries, but every time I say that, there is no more injuries. But Cespedes out 10 months now, So, let's just keep our fingers crossed that some of the big guns, especially the best pitcher in baseball, doesn't get hurt, because that would be an absolute disaster. That's going to do it. Let's go Mets.